Mr. Melchior made, the fact that there doesn't seem to be a ceasefire imminent, and the fact that this conflict could continue. We are already on the month 6 in March of this year. How is this going to impact India, you think? Apart from what we already discussed, the Houthi attacks on merchant shipping, including Indian shipping.
Yeah, absolutely. Very relevant question, Sandeep. India, as we all know, 95% of our trade goes through maritime routes.
Yes.
Out of 95%, good about 55% passes through South China or the West Pacific, and the remaining 40-45% is actually passing through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal and all other routes. So given this 45%, people who are domain experts or economic experts, they have carried out a rough estimate that India this year alone will be losing out almost 30 billion worth of our revenue or the profit from the export market. That is as far as the export is concerned. We have a huge number of our population actually, transiting or moving from our subcontinent to Middle East and beyond that to Europe. It impacts when there is a conflict like this ongoing. Our IMEC corridor, which was proposed during G20, that itself, although the experts say that the 75% of the architecture is already existing on ground, rest is a matter of 25%. They have to be only, rejigged or have to be fixed up. That actually gives life to the very concept of IMEC. That is actually being held in a big question. And also other things is, like I have spoken about the Central Europe, spoken about the West Asia. Within West Asia itself, there are new dynamics, new stakeholders who are actually throwing up their ugly heads. So, and to our west is our neighbor who's going through a constitutional crisis, a political, rejuvenation of its political revival, as also the economic survival is at stake. So whatever happens in your neighbor, if a house is burning, it will have a significant impact on us. And look at Maldives. Here is a country, so recent past only it has gone hostile against India, epicenter of radicalization, and you have highest per capita membership in the ISIS-like organization. There people go and carry out training in madrasa. So when the West Asia is actually burning, when the conflict is ongoing, it is not going to be studied in isolation as a geopolitical expert. I actually wish to urge our viewers to understand that these dots have to be joined to get the larger picture of the geopolitics. Anything happening in Gaza is going to have a significant bearing and impact on economics, on diplomacy, on intelligence or information, and also the defense and the militarization of the entire area. It is not only the Indian Ocean region which is witnessing a strategic rivalry between US and China. India has to be subjected to, it will be bearing the brunt of the militarization and the strategic rivalry. It will have a significant impact on our economy. So all these things put together, entire global order has to be given a relook. We need to actually put our thought process in a cool head, get our acts together and put this mindless war to an end. Even if it doesn't want to end, Israel doesn't want to bring it to an end, we need to put it to an end for the larger good of the global order, for the larger good of the people all over, whether it is a leading economy or it is a global south.
Absolutely. Mr. Melchior, and I want to ask you a last question here is based on what General Sudhakar Jee said, that where does the war really end? I mean, will it end with the return of the hostages, if Hamas returns hostages and Israel would call for a complete halt to the offensive?
So as it was discussed yesterday in the White House by Benny Gantz, who was there meeting the Vice President, you cannot finish a war, you cannot put out 80% of a fire. So in my opinion, the war will be over once Rafah is conquered and cleared of the Hamas militants. Remember, Israel has conquered all the rest of Gaza and more or less cleared Hamas infrastructure. Yes, you can never eliminate fully. But Rafah is still a place that needs to be dealt with. The problem is how you get the civilians who have huddled there out there safely. Israel does not want civilian casualties. It could have been over a long time ago if we did. So therefore, in my opinion, that is the end. There is another exit point with an extreme deal of hostages and some kind of laying down arms. But again, I'm not optimistic on that. So I believe that this will only happen after the Rafah campaign. and then I believe that things will be able to cool down, at least on the southern front.
Right, absolutely. Rafah is the final front, and that marks possibly the end of the conflict, as Mr. Melchior just mentioned, the fact that once Israel, the IDF, has captured Rafah, that could mean the end of the conflict. So we can only hope that happens quickly and as painlessly as possible, with minimum civilian lives, and of course the return of the hostages who've been away from their families for more than 6 months. I'd like to thank Mr. Melchior, General Sudhakar Jee, for joining us this evening on the News9 Plus show, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Thank you very much, gentlemen. There's an arc of instability across West Asia, from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea, and of course the war in Gaza, which we just discussed. There's a simmering conflict in Iraq and Syria, and now the growing attacks on shipping in the Gulf of Aden, not to mention the internet cables that are at risk now. They all have one thing in common: Iran. Watch this story by Deepak Bhadana on why the dominant player in West Asia matters to India. When Israel attacked Gaza after the October 7th terror attacks by Hamas, a few could have seen the beginning of a broader regional conflict. And few people have acknowledged the rise of a new regional power. Now look at the map of proxies around West Asia. There's Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. In the north you have Hezbollah. To the south you have the Houthis, also known as Ansar Allah, and back again in Iraq you have the Shiite militia groups like Kataib Hezbollah. Now all of this ring of proxies, they're all part of a shadowy empire of proxies. All of them armed, funded, and to an extent controlled by one nation: Iran.
So it has created sources of support in different places, in Syria and in Lebanon and in Iraq and in Yemen. What you are seeing is the reaction of these elements to what is happening in Palestine.
There's this fear that Iran can, with its power projection, cause real problems for America and for the West in general.
Right now, we are in the middle of the conflict. Tremendous amount of human suffering is taking place, and who knows what the longer term consequences of this conflict would be, even if it is ended tomorrow.
The question on everyone's minds is what happens next. If Iran indeed is the power behind this new conflict, what do the Iranians want? And how does it plan to achieve its aims, and what does those aims mean for India and the world?
Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.